Hello and welcome to Masters of Divinity. I'm your moderator, JP, and I'm here as always with Father Chuck.
What up, man?
And Matt.
Hey, just Matt. Just me.
And guys, I want to get meta for a second. You know, I don't pride myself on beginnings or endings. Middles are kind of, too.
Iffy.
And I'm not some that great at like introductions, but I try, right? And so we have guests, and I'm so excited that they're here, and I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna like not do anything fancy. I wish I could hit them with a wall of sound like they do on their podcast.
Oh,
I wish I could, but I don't. I don't have that kind of cool equipment to work with, but let's just get to it. Good Christian Fun is here, and their hosts Kevin Porter and Caroline Ely.
Hey, we are Good Christian Fun.
We are Christian.
The greatest crossover.
Nominally.
The greatest crossover since I think Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers, probably.
Oh yeah. What is Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers?
Yeah, sorry. I was like super busy having a lot of sex as I was growing up.
Oh, well, I mean, that's fine. That's
of us explaining Ninja Turtles to uninterested women.
Guys, we are so excited that you're here. We love your podcast. We're big fans.
Oh, thank you.
And it's mostly because we kind of do something similar a little bit. Why don't you go ahead and just kind of explain to our audience what is Good Christian Fun?
Well, gosh, I mean, we're not used to describing what the podcast is every damn week. Let me take a crack at it.
I don't know.
Which is Good Christian Fun is a podcast all about Christian pop culture, Christian music, movies, and entertainment, Christian rock, pure flicks films, talking DC talk, God's Not Dead, Left Behind, Newsboys, things of that nature. Hosted by two people that are kind of sort of Christians, but like to have people on of all faiths or non-faiths. We're not here to proselytize or make you feel bad. We're just here to have fun.
Well, that is just great. So yeah, that's Good Christian Fun.
Except we're here totally to proselytize, and if we don't save your soul before the end of this episode, we'll cry. So no pressure or anything.
Yeah.
Like a good success rate with that? Is that turning out?
No, that's not working so great, but we'll get on that later.
Hey, we got 51 followers on Twitter. It's a process.
One of them is bound to be a Christian,
18
right?
more, baby. All you need is 18 more.
So I just kind of imagined we could just do some, quick introductions, kind of like, just imagine it's like your first time at small group, before you get your workbooks, we just kind of go around. Chuck, do you want to introduce yourself to Good Christian Fun?
Well, I've got the bitter burned coffee in the tiny little styrofoam cup, and
oh yeah,
I'm happy.
Is this also an AA meeting as well?
I mean,
you thought it was a small group.
There's overlap, right?
It's like
AA. It's like AA, but nowhere near as honest with each other. We just pretend.
Oh dear.
So yes, I am Father Chuck. I am an Episcopal priest. I am a husband and father of two wonderful young boys. I am a surfer on the side. I am the senior priest of a church here in Boca Raton and also the head chaplain of a school here on the same campus. I live on the campus and having a pretty good time and enjoying my weekly gathering with these two guys to do what we do. And he is almost as obsessed with Godzilla as Kevin is with Kermit the Frog. So, another
interesting.
Two green amphibians that mean a lot to both of us in our respective lives.
I'm pushing up my glasses, Kevin. I'm actually Godzilla's gray.
Is that true? Oh no! There's like when people think Nicole Richie is white. This is a faux pas on my part. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, Godzilla.
I'll let it slide.
I hope Godzilla doesn't cancel me.
Right. What about you, Matt? Go ahead.
Wow. What do we say about just Matt?
used to be a Baptist deacon. I am no longer a deacon, nor Baptist, so that's fitting.
It worked out real well.
I now work inside a jail because that made sense. So, but yeah, no, and I just love nerdy pop culture, and these two guys just we fell into this together where we were like, hey, we can talk about this stuff and come at it from a direction where the things that you find important in life and have meaning to you interact with everything you watch, and just kind of a fun way to talk about it. And then, and other than that, I mean, I'm just here I told JP, my goal tonight is just to talk to the microphone and go, wow, all night long because you two are on it. And I couldn't be.
Oh, well, let me ask you this. As someone who works in a jail, but also as a purveyor of pop culture or a consumer of pop culture, do you get bugged by shows that get it wrong? Like maybe Orange is the New Black or Oz or the Andy Griffith Show?
Such a great question. And man, does the Andy Griffith Show get it wrong. But
they're not even trying.
Yeah, I do find it was hilarious because I actually had that discussion with my wife. Because we were watching a show and it had a scene with jail in it. She was watching New Amsterdam, a hospital show, and there's a scene that takes place inside of a jail, and I'm like, okay, so parts of it they got right, and the rest is so wrong, it's annoying. Mm-hmm. So just, I mean, like everything else, when you do it in real life and then watch it in a show, how everything's so exaggerated drives me up the wall. So it's like I can't stand them. I can't watch it because I'm like, no, I work inside the jail, and 9 times out of 10, it's just really boring. And the stuff that you see happening on TV, it's like that's not the concerns inside the jail. It's more the concern of trying to make sure that everybody is safe and everybody's taken care of. But there's the issues that come up once in a while and have to be dealt with. But TV makes it look like it's just nonstop.
Like you're constantly finding shivs and stuff.
Yeah, like it's just, I mean, I come home and I pull a few out of my ribs before I go to bed at night.
You find the pie with the file in it and stuff?
Wide swaths of free time on jail shows. That's what I want to see.
Right, just a lot of people watching TV and not having a choice what channel it's on. And if that's not proof of hell, I don't know what is.
Honestly. Is it Bravo, the channel?
That's the only channel we get in the jail.
Cool.
And then every once in a while we type good Christian fun through, and that goes over well. So no problem.
Have you ever played an episode of our podcast in the jail and caused several riots?
No, I would use headphones for sure.
Okay.
But,
oh, that's good.
Sounds like we're missing a ministry opportunity here, fellas, but okay.
Well, anyway, my name is JP. I'm the moderator of this year's podcast, which means I just ask questions.
Ignore him.
My background is in filmmaking. I went to film school and had a spell in the industry. At the moment, I'm actually gearing up to do some farming out here with the family.
Oh, okay.
Wait, hold on. Some farming.
All farming?
A lot of farming?
Yeah, what's the correction?
I'm
waiting.
Well, it's not farming vegetables or produce, if that's what Matt is trying to get at.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at.
On the black.
Well, recently there was some bills passed in Oklahoma to legalize marijuana.
You're burning the patches, right, John?
Oh, he's burning them all right.
I am now. No,
Are you changing the name of the podcast to Masters of Divinity?
Oh, yes. Now we are. Yeah, so let's just say future cannabis grower.
That's great. You're going to be so rich.
I hope so. Then I could probably afford a soundboard.
We should, JP. I feel like we should also mention just that we all also grew up in very similar type of Christian background. We all grew up in some kind of quasi fundamentalist, edging toward evangelical, Baptist adjacent Christianity.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've all kind of left that in our different ways.
Very different ways, but
it's kind of why
But
yeah, it's kind of why we relate to you guys so much, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, Matt and I went to a private Christian school, and
Hey.
Chuck and I went to a private Christian university, which Matt also went to, but that's where we met Chuck.
so we grew up in the bubble hardcore.
Yes,
That's
yes,
for
very
sure.
much so. And it sounds like, based off of what I heard on your episode 0, your Genesis episode, that we did to like a little like about a decade earlier than you did. Because I heard Kevin talking about the music he was familiar with. I was like, oh, that's the stuff I didn't listen to, because I was like Plank Eye, MXPX, some Starflyer, some mid '90s Christian alternative rock. And then some early 2000s of Christian emo, because that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird that whatever the time is that you experience, the new stuff is always gonna, even when it's like 20 years old, is always still new. Where it's like, when I think about like the Third Day album, I'm like, oh yeah, the new one. It's like, no, dog, it came out in like 2003.
Well, I was all NSYNC and +1, so it didn't matter to me. Whatever.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, they are both boy band fans, and I am not. And it's been one of the most trying aspects of our friendship for the past several years.
Oh, I think you need to open your heart up, buddy.
That's what I've been saying for years.
Yeah, it's
been telling you
good.
that for years.
It's good now.
I do enjoy the pop music now. I enjoy the Gaga and the Katy Perry and all that kind of fun stuff.
This is the new Jonas Brothers single. It came out yesterday.
I heard about that. I haven't
Called
heard
Suckers. Ooh, that's fun.
Is it?
Is it fire?
It's great, yeah, and the music
Nice.
video is very great. And they filmed it at the same spot that they did the movie The Favorite, like the same palace.
All right, Nick.
This is true. Yeah, so it's like it was kind of a congealment of all the things I love right now.
So let's shift to you guys. I don't know if you mind us kind of lifting a portion of your podcast and asking you what your guestimonies are.
Sure.
Caroline,
I know-
you gotta
yeah.
sue their asses. That's our trademark. No, we have a case here. Shut the Skype down now.
What are we gonna take? JP's non-soundboard?
We could be weed farmers and make Philly.
Thing is weed.
You could take Father Chuck's $18 collar.
Okay,
I'll
this
take
is
two.
good. We're going to court.
Okay, we can do testimonies. They might have changed now since the last time we gave them.
Sure.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I would love to hear that.
Why don't you start, Caroline?
Okay.
I cede the floor to you.
Sure. I'm Caroline. I am the
Hi,
father of
Caroline.
17 beautiful boys that I love. Big sprawling house, a lot of acreage.
You're father to a cat that's the equivalent of 17 not so beautiful boys.
Fair. Okay, so like you guys, I grew up in a Christian home. I went to Christian school basically from like kindergarten all the way up through high school. Kindergarten through second grade, I went to a charter school in Michigan, which I'm pretty sure was mostly Christians, but wasn't. Anyway, and then third grade and fourth grade, I went to like a little, I think it might have been a Baptist school, but it was also like a small farm, and they had animals everywhere. And the guy that ran it was a completed Jew, if you will.
Okay.
My mom is really excited about that because she has like a little bit of Jew in her family. And anyway, so this guy, he looked like Santa Claus, and he was kind of scary. Anyway, so that was third and fourth grade.
It's
And
fascinating.
then, and then I went to a Christian school. I went to the Calvary Chapel Christian School. I don't know what you call that denomination. It's like just evangelical, I guess.
They're called
Calvinist
chappies.
kind of stuff.
Chappies.
Yeah.
It is, the denomination is non-denominational evangelical.
Okay.
Probably, I don't white evangelical, like.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And that was in inland Southern California, so like the desert area, which is pretty conservative part of California, actually. Yeah, and so I've like been a believer since I can remember, and like even remember doing my first, salvation prayer of many with my mom. I think when I was like 4 in the van.
Oh wow!
It
In
was
the
kind
van.
of a sweet memory. Yeah, and like have always kind of had a connection to that, and that's come and gone. And high school was like an intense time for my faith, and I was really trying to do the right stuff, but I always kind of had this like inferiority complex that I wasn't getting it or doing it right, which kind of carried into college. And then sort of post-college is when I met Kevin and my husband and kind of all the friends that I have now through this other church called Reality LA that was based out of Hollywood. And Reality LA, I think, is also like a non-evangelical white beach and, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But with like a very hidden, deeply Calvinist, like conservative background.
That's how they get you. That's how they get you.
They look so cool. And so Kevin's waving his hand like, but I actually really loved that time. And that was kind of like a great section for me too, because it was kind of like I really got to choose it, and I didn't have to show up if I didn't want to, and I wanted to because I just really loved the friends that I got there. I think I've always had like trickiness with certain parts of Christianity, and I think for the most of my life I just assumed I wasn't getting it, rather than like maybe the stuff I was being served wasn't very good or wasn't very helpful. And so a lot of my faith or my like relationship with God is positive and is like a being that's been there for me. But a lot of it's been like a very anxious relationship of like, what am I doing? Am I getting it right? And no matter what I say, I'm thinking of like the counterpoint to that thing that I should be saying. And anyway, so then when we started this podcast, it was kind of like one of the first times I really felt full license to say fuck that, or like to really be like, I don't want to believe this, or maybe this isn't valuable or helpful or even correct, and like recognizing some of the harm that the church has done to me and done to other people, and being able to now like reorient what I want to believe rather than like what I should. And so I don't know, I'm in like a weird spot now of kind of like having a little distance from the church and distance from faith and God, kind of knowing I'm going to come back, but also like I want to come back willingly instead of by fear or like force. So that's kind of where I'm at.
That's interesting. I gotta say, Carolyn, I kind of deeply relate to that. I haven't been to church in a long time. Last time I went to church, I went to Father Chuck's church.
Yeah.
When I was still living in Florida. I definitely feel that, and I definitely feel like people don't. I think there's some value in that, stepping away for a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think Chuck, you told me once that Mother Teresa even once said that like she didn't hear God's voice for like a decade or something, right? Like.
Yeah, something like the last 15 years of her life, whatever, in her journal, she talked about how she just did not feel the presence of God on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think there's some value in that. I think there is some, and also not just because for some like personal reasons, but also like just the way the church in our country is structured and the way things are done. It's like it's not the most flexible sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's been I think the thing that's been nice about doing the show we've done together is like as I voice these little things here and there've been people who agree or say like, hey, I've been feeling that way too, and it makes me feel less alone. Okay. And it's nice to just like reading other sort of like, I don't know, progressive loosey-goosey Christians out there who have like kind of paved a path, so I don't feel like I'm totally working this out on my own or have no idea like where this goes next. So yeah.
Right. Very good. Well, Kevin, would you like to go?
Ditto. Next. What if that was it and I refused to talk anymore?
I would just go with it and I would apologize somehow.
Sorry.
Like, sorry, Kevin. God, sorry.
It's too pressing. It's too vulnerable. Well, we do actually, we do have a lot of overlap with our stories. In the sense of growing up in, I think, politically conservative households as well as just evangelical Christianity. And I never felt like I really owned faith for myself until I came out here to Los Angeles 10 years ago. So
Really?
back in like 2009. And then that was the first time I felt like I kind of belonged to a church in the way that we used to talk about belonging to a church. Because I had kind of like dabbled and kind of ambled through and had friend groups and youth groups and done Christian art and things like that. And especially growing up, Christian entertainment because of what I was doing in like theater or doing like these egregious human videos, which are like half lip sync battle, half interpretive liturgical dance that you would do in like inner cities while, marginalized communities would just kind of stare at you while you did like a light tap dance to John 3:16 by Jackie Velasquez. But growing up, that Christian art. Yeah, exactly. That Christian, the contemporary Christian music did represent a lot of my reference for like what is art, and it represented a lot of like the raw materials for, okay, like what does this mean? Here's how you make something, and like that was just what was in front of us because my parents were never like puritanical about most media consumption stuff, but it was just what was in front of us. So it was the prism through which I saw art and music to the point where I'm like, oh wow, Eddie Vedder sounds like Mac Powell, when it's like, no, it's probably the other way around. But coming out here in 2009, that's when I first started owning it and working at a church, and kind of when I look back on it now, it feels pretty clear the sense of social survival I had, because I didn't have anything that I was really pursuing hardcore in Los Angeles from like, I guess years 2009 through 2014 or 15, if you want to put it like that. So for me, a lot of it was like, well, I like the community. And part of being a part of that community was subscribing to the tenets of faith that would let everybody still not hate me for X, Y, and Z reasons. And I had like very troubled times, and I kind of felt like a problem child, even in my own community group or men's group, for a lot of that stuff. And a lot of it was just me bumping up against what I thought I was supposed to be and who I actually was, in the sense of the expectations versus the realities of what it means to be a Christian in the 21st century. So for me, it was like a lot of what Caroline was saying, where it's like, I guess I'm just kind of stupid and I'm not getting it. And clearly nothing else is the problem here. I'm the problem. And, going to all sorts of like therapy and asking for prayer and stuff. And I still love my therapist, but asking for prayer and kind of like trying to fix the thing in me, rather than like holistically looking at the things that always bugged me, that were easily written off within a theological context of like, well, of course you're going to bump up against that. Like, the wisdom of the world is folly to the Christian, and vice versa, blah, blah, blah. So it's like there's really nice built-in things for all the doubts that you would encounter in that journey, because it's like, well, of course you feel like that. And like, oh, of course you have this desert season where you kind of go off wandering like a fool, and then you come back like a boomerang into the sweet bosom of Christ. But for me, that wandering period was like we would do this thing in our community group, in the community group that Caroline and I were in, where we would do like share your story, like basically what the guestimony is, but with people in the community group. Mm-hmm. And they never asked me to share, but I was always ready to say no if they ever did, because I always felt like I was in the second act of whatever the thing was, where it's like there were such clear arcs to everyone that went before me, where it's like I was like this, and then I felt this, and then I came back to this, and I was changed and clear, like, Joseph Campbell stuff. But for me, I was always like, I think I'm kind of in the middle of it still, and I don't know, we'll see about tomorrow. And that was just my life for like, 6, 7, 8 years. And doing the podcast, well, I think doing the podcast I did before made it so it was the first time I had to like speak publicly to more than 3 people at a time on a regular basis. So it was clarifying in that it's like, well, say what you mean to me, what you say, and don't say something half-hearted or half-assed, and be willing to educate yourself and shut up about the things that you don't know what you're talking about. So through that process, I think the things that felt morally, like intrinsically on a bone level, untenable about the Christianity that I was given being raised, became clear to me, and it actually became safe to express. Not even publicly, but just privately, because I was used to talking publicly. So through that, then the kind of the proliferation of voices, like what you guys are doing, and like other podcasts, like before there was Good Christian Fun, before the almighty Good Christian
The before
Fun.
times.
Yeah, BGC.
Actual BC, not the CBE crap.
Yeah, exactly. And then I kind of felt safer, and like I wasn't going to threaten everything and risk everything in my social standing or in my eternal salvation and burning in hell. If I was like, you know what? I think this gay stuff sucks in the Bible. I think it's stupid. I don't like it. I'm not gonna deal with it anymore in the way that I've been dealing with it before, which was either apathy or, more apathy. So I feel like it's I forget what that process is called in chemistry, where the thing that becomes studied changes by the fact that it's being studied. Some law.
Ask the wrong guy. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's probably some bullshit in Breaking Bad I heard.
I mean, it's called osmosis.
No, it's not osmosis. It's called photosynthesis. In that, doing the podcast was helpful and clarifying to come to a place where even just having Caroline by my side, where it's like, we're okay and we're safe, being able to throw these things out, keep these things, and still feel valuable and loved. Because that's the thing, is like some of this stuff, it feels like if you don't believe it, then maybe you're not valuable, because your value gets so tied into the social contract and fabric of like what it means to belong to a church, and then what it means to believe those things. So then since then I've become very confident and casual being a tourist sometimes, or being a consumer with certain social spaces and with certain friends, where if I have a friend that doesn't affirm gay people, I'm not going to cancel them, but I feel safer being friends with them than even that I did before, because I feel confident, like, here's what I believe, and I do think you're wrong, but it doesn't have to threaten our relationship together. And then conversely, I feel like I've been able to open myself to a lot more possibility and love and relationship and grace, as it's more broadly defined by, honestly, more people on earth right now. So right now I feel okay. I still don't know if God's real. But I feel okay with where I'm at, where it's like, I don't know, and I hope he is. And maybe sometimes I pray to him and I'm like, I hope you're real. If you're not, that sucks, but if you are, blah 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 blah. And I feel okay being like that and not having like ironclad answers all the time. So overall, I just feel okay in the positive sense of the word, not in the mediocre sense of the word. But it's just like, finally, for the first time in a long time, I feel okay. I feel everything's fine,
Yeah, and I gotta say, that's what I love most. I mean, I love everything about your guys' podcast. It's hilarious. It cracks me up on my way to go to jail, and that's hard to do. And it cheers me up on my way home from jail, and that's even harder to do. But I love about especially the guestimony segment is just the open, honest discussion that takes place when you remove all the negative stigmas that tend to surround a church setting. And people are like, you have to talk about it a certain way. You can talk about it, but you have to talk about it this way. And when you remove that, the honest discussion that takes place on your podcast with the guests that you have, and the two of you, and how open you are about what you believe, and what you're not sure and what you are sure. And I love hearing that discussion take place. And to me, that's what church was supposed to be. And what I feel like it isn't a lot of times is a place where we're in this figuring it out together. So we have to be willing to talk about anything, willing to approach it from any angle, and willing to be forgiving of the person next to me who may not see it the same way. When in America, especially Western culture, church has become a place that it's like, well, you see it our way or you can go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely something that I've run into a lot in my personal life that's led me down many different roads. It's just, you run into those people that it's like, if you want to talk this way, then we'll talk to you. But if you cross a line, then you're out. We don't want to hear it. We'll have nothing to do with you. And I'm like, then how are we actually interacting with this world we live in if you're not willing to even talk? And I love hearing the discussion that takes place on your podcast when it's just free to be, it's just free. Say whatever you're going to say. We'll disagree. We'll tell you if we think you're wrong, but you can say it and it's okay. And that discussion that takes place around that is always incredible.
Yeah, that's always my favorite part too. And it's incredible, like the things that people will say when I've like removed the agenda of like trying to save them or like or like correct them even, and just my only agenda is like curiosity and letting them share what they've had. And because a lot of time with people that come on, I can tell that they're trying to like not say things out of respect for us as Christians, that like they don't want to offend us or they don't want to start a fight or something, understandably. And it's nice to like, and I think we're only able to do that too because we're maybe not a church, or we're not like, we're not unified around any sort of like belief beyond, hey, your experience is valuable or whatever, or we're just interested in it. So yeah, it's my favorite part too, because I'm just a gossip, nosy person, and I want to know how people live and where they come from. But like, too, I always feel like blown away and very grateful by what people will share about their lives, because religion is like difficult and wonderful and sometimes traumatic, and it's always cool to get a better understanding of what the world is like for other people.
And I think oddly, there's this strange feeling that it's actually more safe the more public it is. It's almost like if you and your friend were having a discussion, you're less likely to be rude or ugly to them if it's in a group of people than it is one-on-one. So the kind of group of people that is like the relationship between us talking in the room and the audience creates this like really cool safety where we can have intimacy where we are, where it is like a 2-on-1 discussion, but still the audience is like the safety net of like, don't worry, we're not going to be jerks, because then people won't like us anymore. So of course we're not going to try any shenanigans or anything like that. So that's something that I think is really hard to recreate in real, like off mic, non-podcast life. It's like a strange circumstance. It's artifice by nature. So it's cool to have found to be able to create a space in which that can happen and everyone feels safe and okay about it.
Yeah, and I mean, that makes sense because I won't even talk to these two unless we're recording. So
that's true.
Caroline, we haven't had an off-mic discussion since 2017.
Yeah, it was kind of like dead silence in this room up until you guys plugged in.
That's right.
There was something you were saying, Caroline, about that sense of removing all of the, lack of a better word, all the bullshit that kind of comes with church stuff that surrounds conversations with people, that allows them to get honest. I just yesterday I was teaching a class, and one of my students asked me, as a priest, he's like, well, how do you interact with somebody who doesn't know, like, if they believe in God or not? Like, what do you, like, where do you, what are your thoughts on that or whatever? Yeah. And it just brought me back to this place, and I was telling the story to this kid, and just you talk about this, maybe think of it. I used to do door-to-door evangelism every Wednesday of my teenage years, because that's
yeah. Soul Patrol, baby.
Soul Patrol.
You and Taylor Hicks.
Seriously, every Wednesday right after school, I'd get on a bus and we would go like in pairs. They would drop us off at the head of like blocks in my neighborhood. I grew up in Pine Hills. It was a neighborhood outside of Orlando that everyone who lives there calls it Crime Hill. So like, just now on this side of it as a pastor, I'm just trying to imagine like the insurance like nightmare that this had to have been.
Sure.
I'm still impressed that like, years removed and like disagreeing with the practice of that, I'm still so impressed you went and did that every week, because that's so terrifying to me.
Yeah, like 4 or 5, like I seriously, like 4 or 5 years of doing this on a weekly basis. Well, but here's the best part about this one story, and it's when it changed. So much of it changed for me. Was I had gone through years of like of trainings. I've been taught like the script and how to like it was door-to-door sales is really what it was, right?
Yeah, like how to answer every question and like swat away problems. Yeah.
So I knock on this door and this guy answers, and I open up my opening question: if you were to die today, are you 100% sure if you would go to heaven or not? And this guy, he just goes, "Well, I'm an atheist," and I had nothing to say. And at that moment, I said that to him. I get real honest. I said, well, I guess I have nothing to say to you. And then suddenly we just had a conversation. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of got to talking, and he was talking about some of the struggles and stuff that are going on in his life and just different things that he's dealing with. And that's when it dawned on me that in all my years of doing that, 9 times out of 10, I met other Christians. And they, because the people who had opened the door, were already kind of sort of on board. They kind of knew what I was about, right? And so if some people tried to fight with me or whatever, like verbal arguments or whatever, but this guy, we just had this really awesome conversation. And that's when I realized this approach doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't work. Yeah. And the best thing in this is just to listen to this person and where they're coming from, rather than constantly having the counter argument in the back of my mind. It's like, I'm going to best you in some kind of logical thing. Because first of all, if this is this life-changing experience that we're trying to get people on board with, this encounter with Jesus is going to drastically change their life, I don't think that like craftily worded rhetoric is what's going to make that happen.
Right.
It's like being a pickup artist.
Yeah, I for one got mind freaked into being a Christian, so defies that.
Nice.
Pastor Chris Angel.
Yeah.
Pastor Chris, he was very effective in his methods.
Trust him with anything.
Hovering over the Luxor, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just picturing Chris Angel now pulling off a resurrection routine, because we know he could do it. So.
I think he's done one. I don't know.
So powerful.
Yeah, powerful moment.
I'm just thinking of the number of youth pastors that I've seen out there that look like Chris Angel.
Well, as long as we all keep in mind that Christ was the true and perfect mind freak to begin with. He walked on water, so Chris could run on water.
So let me ask you guys, how did you guys meet?
Choich, baby. We met at Reality LA 6 years ago. It was September 2013. I remember it like it was yesterday. It might have been August, but it was fall of 2013. And we quickly started hanging out and just like hanging out in our groups, and sometimes like going to comedy shows together before either of us were performing comedy on any level at all.
Kevin was a big UCB fan. Is a big UCB fan, but at the time you were going to a lot of shows, like probably 2 or 3 times a week, at least. And you were always like generously inviting people along, and I didn't really know anything about that scene. And so, I feel like that's where I started hanging out with you the most, because you'd have to wait in line for like a good half hour.
How old were you at the time? 21?
I was 24.
You were 24? Oh, yeah. I keep thinking you're younger than me.
No, 23. I was 23. Yeah.
In 2013.
Yeah, but the group we met in was like a smaller Bible study, because Reality is like so spread out. There's, LA is just a huge city. They would do things like by neighborhood. And so we were like one of the Pasadena Bible study groups that met together just out of like convenience.
Led by a mysterious, solemn, quiet, shy, but alluring type of
sideburns,
like mutton chops for days,
loose shorts,
kind of.
And I fell in love with him.
Little unknown soldier in the making named Nathaniel Ely.
Yeah. Yeah, and then date my first night. Do you remember, did you have like a first impression of me, Kevin? Do you remember?
Well, my first impression of you was tied up with your friend and roommate at the time that we're still friends with. So for me, I thought of you two as like a pair.
Ah, okay.
And you were not distinct at all to me.
That makes sense.
You had no personality to speak of. You're just a pea in a pot. Yeah. Oh, hey, girl number 2, you want to get coffee? No, I thought... Well, I think I've told you this. My first impression of you was, there was that one birthday trip where we all went up to Malibu.
Right.
And you and I carpooled together.
Yeah. Well, we'd known each other for a while before then.
That was November, so it was like 2 months.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, but that's my first memory of us hanging out. Was that.
Oh, okay.
That, and then I have this real distinct memory of us talking about The Wolf of Wall Street after the Christmas break. And being
yeah.
Actually, I thought it was bad.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't like that movie.
It's so fitting that that's the movie that, like, united us as friends.
It's Wolf of Wall Street.
The nastiest movie I've ever seen in my life.
And you watched it with your family, right?
No,
no.
my God. I watched it almost just as bad with like my two best friends who were still like, pretty G-rated as best people. One of them I later found out like considered leaving early but didn't want to be a dork about it.
That's actually pretty similar to how Matt and I met the first time we hung out. We were in high school. I had come from this public school in Orlando and just started going to this, Christian school with Matt. And the first time we hung out, we invited a bunch of our friends who were very G-rated, and I showed them all Fight Club.
Oh my God.
Which was like a huge mistake, and everyone left but Matt.
Oh man.
JP destroyed my faith that night.
For that. When everyone really left, Matt stayed.
He stayed, and then we watched Silence of the Lambs. It was a great night.
Oh, a double feature.
Yes, but when Silence of the Lambs is the tame one to put you to sleep at night, he messed me up with Fight Club when we were young.
Although, oddly, I have more memory of Silence of the Lambs being spookier and more disturbing than Fight Club.
Oh, no. Nowadays, I 100% agree with you. But we are slightly older than you, so I was slightly younger when I saw Fight Club. And it messed me up. I was like, what did this guy bring me here to watch? I didn't leave because I was scared, and I thought the doors were locked and that he would chase me down anyway. But that's a different story, so...
I would have.
You're a pawn in the scheme of capitalism.
My biggest fear was not looking like Brad Pitt shirtless.
well, that's good. So you guys, you met in church, and then you started to go into UCB together. Is that kind of how you guys kind of developed?
We weren't like in the shows. We just kind of started doing that, and then we hung out. And I mean, all the while we're doing these weekly, Bible study meetings, which usually turned into like dinner or tacos or beers afterward or something like that. So we saw each other pretty often on top of whatever. And we became fast friends.
And then we drifted apart for years, only to be reunited for money.
No, it's Kevin's always a friend that's made me laugh a lot, and I like to think I've made you laugh too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Sorry, when I go high with that. No, that was in. No, I've told you that.
Yeah.
I remember the first Christmas card I wrote you. That's the only thing I remember saying is I think you're funny.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we were like a little pack with our group of pals who we still hang out with.
You can say squad goals if you want to.
I don't.
And two, it became this thing of like, of all those people, a lot of them moved away, a lot of them got married and sequestered off, or a lot of them just kind of moved to different parts of town, and it kind of became a survivor situation where out of that time, there's really only like 4 of us that consistently hang out at all anymore, so everyone kind of drifted away. And I remember having this conversation before we even started the podcast, like maybe a year or two before, where it's like, I think I only need 5 friends, and it was Nathan and Caroline and someone else in the car, and I'm like, I think it's like you 3 and maybe like 1 other person. I think I'm good. So I got intense about it in an explicit way of like, this is all it is, right? And we're like, yeah.
New friends.
So is that how did the genesis of the podcast come about? Is this something that just kind of naturally happened between the two of you? Just like one day just picked up a microphone and it just happened, or is it?
Yeah, we both stumbled into a microphone.
What are these words coming out of my mouth?
Well, we need to talk about
if it works for Maisel, it's good enough for me. That's all I'm saying.
Both got blind drunk and showed our boobs at New York City.
Well, for all this too, Kevin did a podcast called Gilmore Guys that was like, I can say it, wildly successful, truly. And
I've never heard of it. I don't.
Me neither. And
I don't know her.
That was like a 3-year run.
2000. It was 2014 to 2017.
Yeah, with Demi Dijuibe. And I regret this, but I think I made fun of you a lot about that podcast. So later you told me her feelings, and I felt really bad because I really did admire the work you did and was kind of jealous of it on some level too.
Oh yeah, for most of the run of that show, I thought you thought it was a joke. Until like maybe like the last month where we were playing the no or something. But yeah, most of the time my memory is like, well, Caroline thinks I'm a joke.
Oh, that's such a shame. Yeah.
I don't think that now. I don't. For the most part, don't think that now.
Yeah, but it was pretty cool, and I think like all of us as your friends too were just like kind of amazed to watch you like rocket off on this like WB show about a mom and a daughter that I had watched like a little bit here and there. But yeah, it was amazing, and then you guys wrapped that up, and then maybe you take it from here.
And then I got podcasting blue balls, baby. I knew my voice out in the world again. No, it was the thing of like, it felt strange to not have that. It was nice to take a break from having to talk, but it became like this weird itch that I needed to scratch. And of like, well, I guess I'll start another show. And it was nice because at the time too, it felt a lot like the way Gilmore was started, where it's like, we'll see, who cares, this will be fun.
Right.
And at the time it wasn't like, and then we're gonna like go on tour and make millions, although we wouldn't mind doing either of those things. But what's like, let's do it because it's fun. And I pitched it to Caroline. I cornered her during a group hang in a crowded room and said like, do you want to host this? Because I've been tossing around the idea because it was just something where I'd not heard that sort of like, I want someone to talk about Carmen. Like, so why is no one doing that? So I figured if I wanted it, then maybe someone else would. So that was kind of the genesis of the idea. And Caroline and I had such a natural chemistry already in our conversations that it felt like a good fit to monetize that and put on mics.
We had a great osmosis, if you will.
Oh, a great osmosis. There was a photosynthesis of bits and jokes. But yeah, and it was, I kind of put her through the ringer of the process, though. It was like I was, selecting, it was like I was Lorne Michaels casting the new featured player on SNL, because there was a bit of an audition process, and we did record something that we recorded a couple of things that we never put out. Because, like when it's your friends, you just love your friends so much, and you're like, well, I think you're hilarious. Doesn't mean I'm like super wrong and just up my own butt about it, because everyone thinks their friends are funny. Everyone thinks their mom and dad is funny, or whatever the case.
I don't.
That's pretty much how our podcast started. So yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if the nations would concur, but they did pretty easily, and I was very happy to see that everyone saw in Caroline what I saw in her as valuable and wonderful. So then we started back at the end of 2017, fall 2017, and have been doing it ever since. But that was the basics of it. I enjoyed that it was organic, and it came out of conversations that were already naturally happening in our friendship.
Yeah, but it was a little scary too, at least on my end too, because I knew one that like just by nature of you being who you are, like there wasn't going to be a period where we had, only 2 listeners and I could get all of my like accidental racial comments out or something like that. Like no one would have a beef with me. And so I just was like aware that it would be, like some exposure that I maybe wasn't ready for. And 2, that we'd be talking about religion, which as we talked about, I was like already shaky enough. And I was like, I need to go get a Masters in Divinity so I know what I'm talking about, and people won't give me shit all the time about like getting the wrong apostle listed or something. And so we like talked about it for a while, and I was like really concerned with making sure we knew like what the point of the show was or what we were trying to do, at least with the faith stuff.
We wrote up a manifesto and a Google Doc.
And like
she made me memorize it and recite it before we start.
Bloody knees,
and like Article 4 states that we shall not convert nor condemn.
But we were just, it was important to me and both of us too to figure out like, what are we trying to do? We're not preaching, but we're not angry, but also we have opinions. How do we manage that tightrope walk without like being kind to people, or like burning the bridges of the faith or the friendships that we have that we love and want to keep. And so I think we've kind of struck the balance at this point.
Yeah, I kind of feel that too. That's definitely something that we try to focus on. I know we talk a lot about, there are times when we kind of get critical of things happening, and we always sort of preface it by saying like, we're not trying to be bitter. we're just saying like we just have opinions on these things, and we're learning from them.
Yeah.
I'm blanking. Sorry, I had like 3 fingers of Crown Royale, so I'm a little...
Hey, ours too. It's a recording ritual. Well, I think that's a good point you make, because I think especially in 2019, and this might be a personal sensibility, but I feel like it's shared culturally too, because I'm just a whim. I'm a leaf on the cultural winds of change. But I feel like anger that isn't useful doesn't age well. Now, it's different from like a righteous anger or useful anger or hating things that are like truly bad or evil, but anger that's just like for anger's sake or doesn't have like a even like a softness or sincerity to a point of like kindness and goodness. I feel like you look back on it, it's like, well, that's just like a mad guy. That's just like a mad person.
But like hadn't processed to the compassion or forgiveness yet. And so it was just like angry because like I feel smart or something like that. And I feel like there have been points where I've expressed that kind of anger on the show and I like kind of regret it later. And it's always like a good reminder in the back of my head of like, okay, like you don't have to be that that harsh, or like it's not wimpy to like also try to see it from a church's point of view and what they're trying to do and like be fair on some level while still saying like, hey, it's not cool to treat people this way.
Nice. So do you ever have trouble like describing the podcast to people, like when you're not recording, like when people ask you like what your podcast is about, or maybe when you were pitching it at first, or we're just kind of grappling with it's a Christian podcast, but it's not a Christian podcast. It's a
it's a horrifying dance I have to do every time. When I like got a new job in the middle of this show, like last year, and I was like, oh, I should bring up that I do a podcast. Like that's a little feather in my cap. Like she's got something going on or something, and then quickly realized my mistake of like now I have to like in a workplace setting like describe my my nasty podcast that's like seems Christian but is like I say horrible things about my husband's dong on it. Like these guys look this up and listen to it. So like how do I be both vague while bragging?
And whenever Caroline means to me, I always threaten to email the podcast to our coworkers.
And it's
like, don't do it. Very scared. Keep pushing, girl. See what happens.
Yeah. Also, it was difficult to describe it to my family too. I don't know if you guys had that with your show at all, but I still have family members that are pretty conservative, you know, in the church, and like I think at first they were really hopeful that it was like a like a work for the kingdom kind of podcast, and then I had to tell them it wasn't.
My family's super conservative, but luckily they won't listen to me anyway, so it's not really a concern. So I don't have to worry about it.
My mom doesn't know how to work the podcast app anyway, so I don't.
Oh, bless her. She never does.
You can always take the tack from a lot of those Christian bands that have tried to go mainstream, and they say, you know, we're not a Christian band, we're Christians in a band, right? Like it's not a Christian podcast. We're Christians in a podcast.
And we do talk about Christ every episode,
that's right.
But it is different.
I will say, though, in favor of my family, they all like surprised me by how accepting and kind they were, and didn't raise an eyebrow, and they were really cool.
I have not spoken to my mother or father in 3 years.
It's not true.
No, it's not true.
I was going to say, oh no, we're going to go there.
Well, yeah, there's the awkward ending to the podcast.
Farewell, Masters.
So I kind of I just want to geek out a little bit about your podcast, if that's okay. Just
kind
of want to fanboy
words
out.
of definition are our love language. I think, right?
Kevin's rubbing his nipple already.
Yeah.
I didn't need
your
that.
cats.
Go on.
So let me ask you right now, what are the strongest contenders at this moment for best and worst Christian songs?
Oh, I thought you were going to say just Christian.
Oh, that too. We could go there.
Where does Osteen rank? That's what I want to know.
Suckiest guess.
Well, we recently did pick a good song, and I do think it is the best one that I've ever heard, and it's Shackles.
Shackles by Mary Mary is king.
Okay,
it's queen.
Yeah, I gotta say, I thought I didn't like that song until I listened to your episode again and realized I was singing along every time you played a clip of it.
it's in there and it's good and the messaging is great. I love it.
Yeah, I would be hard pressed to find the human that doesn't respond to that song in some positive way.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the worst songs go, the problem is
All the rest
like
of them.
well, we listen to him, and then like we listen to him for so long, we develop this like Stockholmy affection for him.
Yeah.
And like so Big M kind of is great after a certain point.
I love that song.
Yeah, we love that song now. So it's like, well, this sucks. Cartoons rocks now.
Yeah.
So worst is really hard. Like I feel like whatever the worst song is in our hearts right now is like whatever is the last worst song that we heard, which I guess on as of recording this right now is The Unknown Soldier by David Michie.
Yeah.
A tale of a young little boy that gets bullied at college and he's actually a soldier for the Lord by
That's
praying
right. Yeah.
for his
Oh my gosh.
brethren at home.
I mean, I'll say that I do still feel my skin fall off every time we listen to a Carman song.
Yeah, so
So
say
I-
the champion.
Yeah. Or America Again. There's any of those.
America
Oh.
again.
Yeah, those I really think are the worst because they are disgusting.
I just want to say his song about meeting a witch or something like changed my life.
And then a witch sent me an Evite on my Google account.
And he saw Dungeons and Dragons in the corner.
He's organized.
I RSVP'd very promptly.
And I gotta share to because you mentioned the cartoon song by Chris Rice, and I gotta share just to give you an idea of how I grew up. I have a very distinct memory of being dressed as the Chick-fil-A cow, dancing in front of a giant amphitheater full of people to that song while Chris Rice sang it, and then going backstage to meet the newsboys dressed as the Chick-fil-A cow. And getting all their signatures. So,
Wait, did you take the cow mask off when you met
touring?
Peter Furler and whatnot?
oh no, because what I told people are like, yeah, but you're the cow. And what I would tell them is, yeah, but they wouldn't remember me, but they'll remember the cow.
Oh my God.
That's a fair point.
This is incredible.
So that gives you an idea of my background, just to kind of backtrack there. And
Yeah, no, I feel like that kind of put everything in focus as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, damn, you guys were.
I got you.
Oh yeah, I was in it all the way.
So one thing I kind of noticed is that we actually have a couple of episodes that overlap, like very specifically.
In a divinely ordained way. They overlap.
Like we
Yeah.
both covered A Thief in the Night on Halloween this past year.
Yeah, that was weird. Work of Satan, perhaps?
Yes.
Perhaps. Yeah, that movie probably.
I think JP, you're helping build their case against their lawsuit against us is what I think is happening.
I think that is.
What else do you feel like you've ripped off from?
Well,
as far as what we thought about the movie, I will say that Father Chuck has a new life goal to turn himself into Pastor Dwayne.
Oh, totally.
And I keep telling him that if he added a couple inches to his shorts, he would make me feel more comfortable sitting close to him. Like this.
Is that the redhead guy in that
Yeah.
movie?
Yes,
Oh,
that is
yeah.
the creepy pastor who
He's a pastor?
he gives a speech
Yeah,
while
the pastor at Teen Town.
leaning back on one elbow with his knee
Right.
up.
Yeah,
What
his
was
like Burt Reynolds pose while he's trying to like just say the good word of the Lord.
I kind of like it.
Fred Eagle talking to Patty. So creepy.
What was the name of their band? The Fish Market Combo? Is that what?
Yes.
It was the Fish Market Combo.
Wow.
Gosh, classic. So, do you guys have plans to talk about the other installments of the Thief in the Night saga?
Oh gosh, I know there's more. I heard that was the only one that was even kind of watchable though. So
Yeah, and I felt like my brain was melting when I watched that.
I mean, as a connoisseur who grew up with these movies,
right,
I will say that the sequels have more production value.
Oh.
then we're in.
And I will also say that with that production value, they are even that much more awful. So
I will.
that's just my opinion.
The
Okay.
sequel to Thief in the Night, a Distant Thunder, is that a sequel, right?
Yeah, A Distant Thunder. Yes.
It's actually it's incredible. Like they go all out. Patty is she must have gotten an acting coach or something.
Really? The runner?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The Runner.
The Lola.
I mean, listen, like, oh, I don't know if we'll cover it. Cut to like 4 years from now, and we've like
We're on our
scraping
third watch
the
of
bottom
it.
of the barrel. Welcome to episode 422 of GCF. Tonight we're doing the second friggin' Thief in the Night sequel again, just to see if we missed anything the first time. It'll happen. It'll happen.
That's great. We also did. We have a kind of a special event we do every May called Music Mayhem, where each of us kind of pick an album and we talk about it. It could be a Christian album or it could be a popular album. Last year, Matt chose DC Talk's Supernatural.
Oh, hell yeah.
Which was the only Christian album we ever did, and I picked it because it was the first CD I ever owned, which they spent about 2 hours making fun of me for, but that's okay.
Well, what I liked is that it gave us an opportunity to talk about the vastly superior Jesus Freak album a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, those two are kind of peas in the pod with each other.
Yeah. He's currently high-roading me in the world of Christian music, which is kind of like high-roading me while also being 5 years behind anything that's relevant or matters. So I'm not really sure how I feel about this right now. But
actually, there's another bad music product that's superior.
Listen, I own Jesus Freak on vinyl.
Wow.
They recently released it in vinyl, didn't they?
They did. Yeah, it's 25th anniversary?
You know, I mean, guys, I'll be honest, and I love kidding around. I love joking and laughing and making goose. I was legitimately bummed out when I realized they just Weird Al Smells Like Teen Spirit for Jesus Freak.
Oh, yeah.
It's just an overlay. There's no difference whatsoever.
That drum kick that starts that song is identical.
Yes.
Completely stolen.
Yeah.
Oh, I trusted those guys.
Smells like Holy Spirit.
Oh boy.
See, we're not. We don't have UCB bona fides. Like, we're not trading improv.
Hey, you guys are easy laughs.
We're easy. Like, that's all I'm saying.
Oh, you guys are great. I'm so.
Thank you.
What are you?
So I have a question. I'm curious about this. You kind of mentioned it like earlier in the podcast. Do you have any plans to cover like any books, any like Christian evangelical books, like your Wild at Hearts, your I Kiss Dating Goodbyes?
Yeah, like we talked about that, and we'd always sort of planned on doing it, but when it comes to actually executing that, it's sort of difficult because books.
Nobody wants to read them.
Yeah, and like, what guest are we gonna get who will like read all of Redeeming Love or whatever for our 1 hour show?
So right now, our current model is gonna be we read the books, just me and Caroline, and our guest is the author, and we confront them on why they wrote it.
Oh well, when you guys get Josh Harris, we'll be tuning in for that.
I would love to get his apology too.
Let's make Josh cry. Oh. Yeah, but that is something I think we'll start implementing that on second service later this year, because the book thing, it's just like, and I got an audiobook version of I Kiss Dating Goodbye just for the occasion.
Oh,
so
wow.
We'll get it locked and loaded and get clips and stuff. But it is difficult. You can't get the audiobook for it. Like I had to get it on eBay.
Oh, really?
I could not download it from like Audible or something like that.
iTunes, you cowards.
Yeah. Right then.
Oh, yeah. But that's a good question. Do you guys have a request, like something you really need to hear?
Christy, are you guys Christy heads?
I have my own personal. I need anyone, preferably you, to take down John Eldridge, Wild at Heart.
Wild at Heart is the one about like men need to be men, right?
Yes.
Oh God.
Oh my goodness.
And then his wife did the companion book called Captivated. That was like a girl's version.
And then I could share the wonderful
Captivated?
Yeah,
Captivating.
Enslaved.
Captured and caged.
Yeah. And then I could share the wonderful experience of the Band of Brothers retreat based around Wild of Heart, where they just are obsessed with like Braveheart.
Don't you? I know we've kind of talked about this. Did you hunt a squirrel as part of this?
Did I hunt squirrel? No.
I'm sorry, talking to Matt, because he went on this retreat thing that sort of built around Wild at Heart. And these guys at our Christian college that we went to here in West Palm Beach, they would like hunt squirrels after reading Wild at Heart, and I just never understood this. and I really wanted to know what was going on. Is this like part of like getting in touch with one's masculinity to like kill a small animal? I had to know.
Yeah, well, I mean, the squirrels are the ultimate alphas in this world, and if you can take one of those down,
you're set after that.
Provide for your family.
And maybe a second service idea. Have you heard of the card game Redemption?
No.
That might be too nerdy for them, man.
The Christian answer. Go grab it. The Christian answer to Magic the Gathering, and how you obviously don't want to sell your soul to Satan and play Magic. So instead, he's going to bring you one to show you this is what you play.
Okay, we got sort of like a medieval King Arthur thing going.
Oh, no. The whole point is to save lost souls, and you can win amazing cards like Mary Magdalene. And
that's so cool.
Holy hell. You had it right.
Miriam is the most common card, and Holy Hell is probably the best way to describe that deck of cards.
Here's a foil variant version of Hosea's whore wife Gomer.
Hot.
Why is Miriam Wonder Woman?
No, that's Gomer.
Oh, that's Gomer?
This is one of Hosea's whore wives, Gomer. And then we've got the damsel with spirit of divination from the Book of Acts, also a foil variant.
These are fancy cards he's got here. I'm not at all embarrassed to be sitting by them.
Whatever. You were the one who convinced me to buy this set, Matt.
Yeah, when Matt and I were in high school, our one of our teachers had a fellowship group, and he taught all of us how to play the game. And we would go to a comic book store.
And to humiliate
and tried to also evangelize the people while playing comic book in our uniforms also.
Hey, come play the game with all these chicks in it and stuff. You're gonna love
This feels like a fun first date.
Yeah, until the school banned it because it was too evil apparently to play role playing even if you're saving souls.
Oh no, really?
Oh, it's so awful.
No role-playing stuff. Interesting.
Well, I guess that's kind of all the questions I have. I don't know if Matt and Chuck.
No, I just have a final thought, and sorry, Caroline, but this one's just directed to Kevin because I grew up.
Oh wow, flashbacks to my church experience.
Can you plug your ears?
Oh, shut up, Caroline, for a second.
It's a patriarchy foul right now.
No, wait. Now let me tell you this. I told the joke also that I said that JP is kind of like our Kevin, and that it took 2 extra people to try and even be 1/10 of Caroline. So if that helps, then there you go. But
I think I follow, but thank you.
Yeah, the math is good, I think.
But if I can say, Gilmore Girls, I grew up watching, and for me it was junior high into high school, I believe. And I was not exactly accepted for watching it. And when you came out with the Gilmore Guys podcast, I was thrilled about it. And now you're into Maisel, and I love the mix of genuine adoration for the shows while also the acceptance of the fact that these can be ridiculous shows at times and horribly problematic a lot of times. But I just have to say, your podcast outside of Good Christian Fun has been incredible also. And just couldn't have this chance to talk to you personally without saying thank you for those, because those have been amazing.
Oh, thanks, man.
So that's all. So Caroline, you I love you too. So that wasn't a after you attack in any way.
Yeah, no, I love that. Kind of a paragraph long for Kevin and how he's changed your life, and then toss me a little scrap of bacon. Thank you.
That's a patriarchy foul.
Well, I guess waste 4 years of your life talking about a John show, and then you can get a nice compliment too.
No, I don't.
I feel like weirdly,
I have no resentment. You guys are great. Yeah.
It's funny because I feel like the Gilmore Guys thing helped me navigate. It was almost like training for Good Christian Fun of how do you talk about this thing that is very sacred to some people, which you might find absurd in parts. How do you navigate it with delicacy and not hurt anyone's feelings? So yeah, I feel like that was a good training ground for that. But yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks so much for saying that.
I guess that's all the time we have. I want to thank our guests. Kevin and Caroline, guys, thank you so much for doing this.
Our pleasure.
Of course. Thank you for inviting us. It was so nice.
You know, we're a small podcast, a little garage band, as I like to kind of call us. We 51 followers on Twitter. So it
50
for now.
Shout out. Love you guys.
GCF,
Shout out to
check Twitter. Boom, 2,000 followers, baby.
At 53 followers.
Yes. So, but again, thank you so much for coming in. We've really had a great time, and I appreciate it. And before we go, I just want to tell you, at this podcast, we're the Masters of Divinity, loosely based on the Masters of the Universe, based on He-Man, the '80s cartoon. So we don't believe in saying goodbye. We say good journey.
Oh.
So
okay.
I'd like to tell you, Kevin and Caroline, from all three of us, good journey.
And Dotha, good journey to you, gents, as
Good
well.
journey to you, Governor.
and now just for me now, can the two of you do your closing of your podcast, because I love it. And I would
Sure.
love to hear it. So if you want,
We're already knee deep in lawsuits anyway. Might as well just go.
if you would like to plug anything that you have for our 50 listeners, and then do your closing, it would just make my night to end on that personally.
Sure, listen to Good Christian Fun. Follow us at Christian Fun Pod everywhere. You know how to listen to podcasts. You're listening to this one right now. And then at Kevin T. Porter at Caroline's Farts if you want to follow our dumb BS.
Yeah, and all of God's people, Pod's people said,
if you're out on the road,
no,
and all of Pod's people said, Amen. Yay!
Good journey, gentlemen. Thank you.
Good journey.
Good journey.